Opening hook. When the first alien ships arrived, they didn't come in peace. And they thought humanity would fall without a fight. The skies above Earth darkened as massive Zalari warships descended from the void. Their sleek, silver hulls reflected the burning cities below, and their message was clear: surrender or be erased. The world watched in horror as the broadcast came through on every screen, in every language. Humans, your time as an independent species is over. You are weak. You are disorganized. You will submit to the Dominion or face annihilation. It wasn't the first time humanity had been underestimated. The initial attack. Captain Ryan Carter stood on the bridge of the Eagle's Resolve, one of Earth's last remaining defense cruisers. His jaw clenched as he watched the alien fleet hover above Earth's surface, their weapons glowing with charged energy. He had spent his entire career preparing for an enemy they had never met. Now, they were here. And they expected Earth to kneel. The first attack was swift. Zalari energy blasts ripped through Earth's orbital defenses like paper. The Eagle's Resolve shook violently as explosions rocked the fleet. Shields failing, a technician yelled. "We can't take another direct hit." Carter gritted his teeth. He knew the Zalari didn't expect a fight, they had likely conquered dozens of worlds with the same arrogance. But Earth was different. "Open a secure line to command," Carter ordered. A second later, the face of Dr. Evelyn Hayes appeared on the monitor. Her expression was grim. "We're outmatched," she said. "Our defenses won't last another hour." "What about the project?" Carter asked. Dr. Hayes hesitated. "It's untested. If it fails. If we do nothing, we're already dead." Hayes nodded, her fingers flying over the controls. "Activating now." The unexpected twist. In the void above Earth, the Zalari fleet advanced, their massive warships preparing for the final blow. Commander Varek stood on the bridge of the Dominion's flagship, arms crossed. The humans had barely resisted. Pathetic. But then, something changed. A pulse of energy erupted from Earth's surface. A ripple of blue light spread through space, washing over every ship. The Zalari's targeting systems flickered. Their communications scrambled. Weapons failed to fire. Varek's eyes widened. What is happening? And then, for the first time in the history of the Dominion, a human fleet turned and fought back. Cliffhanger ending. As Carter gripped the controls, he gave the order that no Zalari had expected. "All ships, attack." For a brief moment, silence filled space. The Zalari fleet, once an unstoppable force, faltered. Their targeting systems flickered back online, only to find something unexpected. Earth's defense fleet, once scattered and retreating, was no longer running. Inside the Eagle's Resolve, Captain Ryan Carter's heart pounded. He watched as the Zalari ships hesitated. They had expected surrender. Instead, they were facing something new. "Dr. Hayes," Carter barked into the comms, "whatever you did, it worked." Hayes's voice crackled through. "The Neural Combat Interface, NCI, it's active." The NCI wasn't just any defense system. It was a breakthrough, one the Zalari had never encountered. Unlike their rigid, programmed war tactics, humanity had just turned every single ship and pilot into a learning, adapting force. The Zalari had numbers. Humanity now had unpredictability. Commander Varek's shock. On the Zalari flagship, Commander Varek clenched his fists as his tactical officers scrambled. "This shouldn't be possible," one of them stammered. "Human forces are coordinating. Their pilots are adjusting to our movements in real time." Varek's golden eyes narrowed. "Impossible. They are primitive. They do not possess neural-linked warfare." Another officer hesitated. "Sir. I believe they do now." A second later, alarms blared. 3 human cruisers, ones that should have been destroyed minutes ago, swooped down, dodging Zalari fire with eerie precision. Their formations shifted instantly, countering every move the Dominion ships made. And then, for the first time in centuries, a Zalari warship exploded in battle. Varek's jaw tightened. Humanity had just drawn first blood. Earth's counteroffensive. Back on the Eagle's resolve, Carter's crew erupted in cheers. But he wasn't celebrating. He knew better. "We've surprised them," he said, his voice sharp. "But they won't run. This isn't over." Dr. Hayes's voice came over the comms. "The NCI is learning fast. Every second our pilots engage, it gets smarter. It's predicting Zalari flight patterns, countering their movements before they make them." Carter turned back to his crew. "Then let's keep them guessing." "Sir," a lieutenant called out. "Incoming hail from the Zalari flagship." The bridge fell silent. Carter exhaled slowly. "Put it through." The screen flickered. Commander Varek's imposing figure appeared. His golden skin shimmered under the dim lights of his warship. His eyes, filled with disdain, studied Carter. "You should have surrendered," Varek said coldly. "It would have been merciful." Carter leaned forward. "And you should have chosen another planet. Because we don't kneel." A pause. Then, to Carter's surprise, Varek smirked. "Good," the Zalari commander murmured. "A challenge, at last." The screen cut out. Carter clenched his fists. "All ships, hold formation. They're coming back." The Zalari retaliation. As predicted, the Zalari didn't retreat. Instead, they adapted, just as quickly as the NCI had. Varek was no fool. He wouldn't let humans dictate the battle. "Deploy the Kraven shock drones," he ordered. "Scramble their network." In an instant, small metallic spheres shot from the Zalari fleet, pulsing with violet light. Inside Earth's ships, alarms blared. "Something's wrong," Hayes's voice came through, urgent. "They're disrupting the NCI system. It's overloading." Carter's stomach dropped. Their biggest advantage was slipping away. Then, an explosion rocked the Eagle's resolve. "Direct hit to the engines," a crew member shouted. More blasts followed. Zalari warships advanced, their cannons raining fire. The NCI struggled, its calculations lagging. Earth's forces, once fluid and coordinated, began faltering. Varek watched from his flagship, satisfied. "Humans are adaptable," he muttered. "But they are still weak." A desperate move. Inside the Eagle's resolve, sparks flew from shattered consoles. Carter wiped blood from his forehead. They were losing. But if there was one thing humans excelled at, it was fighting against impossible odds. "Hayes," Carter said through gritted teeth, "tell me there's another way." A pause. Then, "There might be," she whispered. "Explain." "Fast." Hayes hesitated. "It's never been tested. Neither was the NCI, and that was working fine until 5 minutes ago." A deep breath. Then, Hayes finally spoke. "There's a failsafe built into the system. It requires a direct neural uplink. A human mind guiding the fleet, in real time." Carter's heart pounded. "You mean a pilot?" Hayes's silence was answer enough. Carter exhaled. "What are the risks?" "If it works, we regain control," Hayes said. "If it fails, your mind will burn out." Carter didn't even hesitate. "Prep the link," he ordered. "I'm going in." Captain Carter knew he was making a choice that no human had ever made before. If this worked, Earth had a fighting chance. If it failed, he wouldn't be around to see what happened next. The neural interface loomed before him, a sleek metal chair with countless glowing wires trailing from its sides. The room pulsed with blue light, its hum vibrating deep in his bones. Carter clenched his fists as Dr. Hayes gave him a final, desperate look. "Once you're connected, there's no turning back," she warned. "The system will fuse with your mind. You'll see the battlefield through every ship, every pilot. You'll feel their movements, control them as if they were your own limbs. But if your brain can't handle the input..." She didn't need to finish the sentence. Carter exhaled. "If this is the only way to win, then let's do it." He sat down. The interface locked around his head. A second later, the universe exploded into his mind. The war through his eyes. In an instant, Carter was no longer just himself. He was every ship in the fleet. He could feel the engines rumbling beneath him, the targeting systems locking on, the pilots' racing heartbeats. He could see the Zalari warships, each movement, each strategy, each flaw. "Captain Carter, can you hear me?" Dr. Hayes's voice echoed in the distance, but it felt miles away. He could feel the battle now. And he could see what the Zalari were planning before they even acted. A new awareness surged through him. They weren't invincible. The counterattack. Carter's mind pulsed with raw energy. His fleet had been on the brink of collapse, but not anymore. Now, they moved with one mind, one purpose. Human fighters swerved at impossible angles, dodging Zalari fire before it was even launched. Battleships predicted incoming assaults and countered before the Zalari even reacted. For the first time, the invaders were losing. Commander Varek watched in shock as 4 human cruisers cut through his flank, obliterating a Zalari command ship in a fiery explosion. His officers turned to him in panic. "Sir, their fleet is evolving." Varek bared his teeth. "Impossible. They are human." His fingers curled into fists. "Then we burn them. The Zalari's deadliest weapon." Varek turned to his weapons officer. "Deploy the Harbinger." The officer hesitated. "But sir, the Harbinger is designed for planetary extermination. If we..." Varek's golden eyes glowed. "I don't care. Earth is no longer worth conquering. It will serve as an example. Activate it." A moment later, the most terrifying weapon in the Zalari arsenal emerged from their flagship. A monstrous black sphere, pulsing with crimson veins, drifted into space. Slowly, it unfolded like a flower of death, its core radiating pure destruction. Inside the Eagle's resolve, alarms blared. Dr. Hayes's voice was frantic. "Captain, they've deployed a Harbinger. That thing isn't a ship, it's a planet killer." Carter's mind reeled. He could feel it, the energy humming inside the Harbinger, its countdown ticking down. If it fired, Earth would cease to exist. He had seconds to act. The impossible plan. The answer hit him like a lightning bolt. Carter's consciousness surged through the neural interface, commanding every ship in the fleet. "All units, focus fire on the Harbinger. We take it out now or we lose everything." The fleet shifted instantly, their weapons locking onto the doomsday device. But the Zalari had anticipated this. Enemy reinforcements warped in, hundreds of them. The Harbinger was guarded by an impenetrable wall of warships. Carter's heart pounded. They couldn't break through in time. Unless... His mind flashed to a single possibility. A suicide maneuver. One ship. One pilot. Straight into the Harbinger's core. And he knew exactly who had to fly it. The final flight. Dr. Hayes's voice broke through the neural link. "Carter, what are you doing?" He had already disengaged from the interface, staggering to his feet. "This ends now." He turned to his crew. "Prepare my fighter." The bridge erupted in protests. Hayes was practically screaming. You won't survive. If that thing detonates. If I don't do this, Earth won't survive. Silence. Then a soft voice, trembling. You don't have to do this alone. Carter turned. His second-in-command, Lieutenant Jordan Hale, stood at attention. A half-smile played on his lips. Let's give them a fight they'll never forget. Carter swallowed hard. Let's end this. The suicide run. 2 human fighters ripped through the chaos of battle, their engines glowing bright as they tore toward the Harbinger. The Zalari warships scrambled to stop them, but the rest of Earth's fleet moved as one, blocking, countering, shielding them with their own ships. Carter's cockpit shuddered. Hale's voice crackled through his comms. We're almost there. The Harbinger's core glowed brighter. Its energy levels spiked. 10 seconds to fire. Carter gritted his teeth. On my mark, full speed ahead. Hale nodded. See you on the other side. Carter's hand hovered over the throttle. 5 seconds. He exhaled. Now. Opening hook. It was supposed to be over. The end of everything. But in the silence that followed, Earth found a new hope, one they had never seen coming. The explosion from the Harbinger's core was catastrophic. A blinding flash of light filled the battlefield, turning space itself into a swirling mass of fire and debris. Captain Carter's final maneuver, the ultimate sacrifice, was supposed to be the end of the war. But when the light faded, the battle didn't stop. The aftermath of the suicide run. Carter's fighter, now nothing more than a charred husk, drifted in the wreckage. The Harbinger was gone, its massive form nothing but floating fragments scattered across the void. For a long moment, the Zalari fleet stopped. No shots were fired. No orders given. Dr. Hayes, still connected to the neural combat interface, felt it, the loss of the captain, and the strange stillness that followed. But then, as the dust settled, something unexpected happened. The Zalari ships, once so confident in their superiority, suddenly began faltering. The first sign of something wrong came when the flagship's once orderly formations disbanded. Their movements became erratic, their fleets out of sync. Officers shouted in confusion. They were no longer operating with the precision they had so arrogantly relied on. A dozen ships veered off course, crashing into each other. Then the truth became clear. The Zalari weren't just losing their command structure. They were losing control. The unexpected betrayal. Inside the Zalari flagship, Commander Varek stood on the bridge, his eyes narrowed with fury. His hand clenched the armrest of his chair as he watched his fleet disintegrate. What's happening? He demanded. The officer at the tactical station stammered, We don't know, sir. The fleet is malfunctioning. Their internal systems are collapsing. Communications are down. A pause. Varek's golden eyes flickered with uncertainty. It wasn't supposed to be like this, he muttered, almost to himself. Then the reality hit him. The humans' final act of defiance had done more than just destroy their superweapon. It had broken the foundation of the Zalari war machine. The neural link the Zalari relied on to coordinate their fleet was now compromised. And Earth's secret weapon, the NCI, had been passed onto the battlefield. Varek realized too late that the humans had prepared for this moment. Carter's sacrifice had bought them enough time to push back the Zalari fleet. But it was more than that. The NCI, though damaged, was now rewired to feed directly into the Zalari systems, infecting their technology like a virus. The shift in power. Back on Earth, Dr. Hayes stood in stunned silence as her team worked frantically to regain control of the fleet's communication systems. The neural combat interface had taken a massive hit, but she wasn't finished yet. Come on, she whispered under her breath as her fingers flew across the console. The ship sensors flickered, then came to life. The NCI was fighting back. The alien influence on the Zalari fleet was growing weaker by the second. Human ships began to operate with incredible precision, more coordinated than ever. Earth's fleet was not just reacting, it was leading. Commander Varek's realization. Back on the bridge of the Zalari flagship, Commander Varek slammed his fist into the console, his eyes wild with rage. The humans weren't just fighting back, they were turning the tide. The Zalari fleet was spiraling out of control, their once perfect strategies now a tangled mess. He couldn't understand it. For the first time, he felt fear. The humans, the weak species, had done the impossible. They had broken the core of the Zalari war machine and had united their forces in ways that should have been beyond them. "Retreat," Varek ordered, his voice laced with desperation. Now. The turning of the tide. On Earth, the atmosphere had shifted. After the initial shock of Carter's sacrifice, hope began to swell within the ranks of Earth's remaining fighters. The humans hadn't won yet, but they were no longer on the back foot. They were now in control. Dr. Hayes stared at the monitor as Earth's fleet, now fully synchronized, moved as one. They were outnumbered. But now, they fought with the strength of their unity. And in the chaos, Earth's fighters adapted faster than the Zalari could retaliate. The Zalari flagship turned, attempting to escape, but it was too late. Earth's forces swarmed. For every Zalari ship that attempted to flee, 2 others were caught in the crossfire. The once unbreakable Zalari Empire was now on the brink of collapse. A ray of hope. Dr. Hayes's voice broke through the tension in the comms. "Captain, we're doing it. We're holding them back." Carter was gone, but his sacrifice had not been in vain. Earth had found a new strength, in unity, in adaptability, and in defying the odds. The fight wasn't over. But Earth had finally become a force the Zalari would never again underestimate. The war had changed. But Earth's victory was still far from certain. The Zalari were retreating, but their final weapon was still waiting. And this time, humanity wouldn't wait for it to strike. The retreat of the Zalari fleet was only temporary. Commander Varek's desperation was palpable. After the damage humanity had caused to the Zalari war machine, Varek was left with one final option, a weapon so devastating it could annihilate entire planets in a single strike. It was humanity's greatest challenge yet: infiltrate the Zalari flagship and destroy their final weapon before it could be unleashed. The plan. Back on Earth, Captain Carter's sacrifice had given humanity a fighting chance, but the battle was far from over. The Zalari had one last trick up their sleeve. Dr. Hayes, still connected to the neural combat interface, worked furiously with Earth's top strategists to devise a plan. The mission was simple in theory: infiltrate the Zalari flagship, locate their final weapon, and disable it before it could fire. The problem was, the Zalari flagship was heavily guarded, and the final weapon, known as the Ruin, was a secret hidden deep within the ship's core. "We don't have time," Dr. Hayes said, her voice strained as she watched the Zalari fleet regrouping. "We have to strike before they can deploy the Ruin." Lieutenant Jordan Hale, Carter's right-hand officer, stood beside her. "So we go in. We find this weapon, and we end it. No more playing nice." The plan was drafted. A small team, led by Hale, would infiltrate the flagship, disable its security, and then plant explosives on the core of the Ruin. The team had no illusions: they weren't walking out of this mission alive. But if they succeeded, Earth would be safe. The infiltration. Under the cover of darkness, the mission began. A small team of elite soldiers, each one hand-picked by Hale, boarded one of the last remaining human stealth ships and slipped past the Zalari's defensive perimeter. They moved fast, their hearts pounding as they entered the Zalari flagship's docking bay. The ship was silent, its halls echoing with the sound of the crew's footsteps. They weren't there to engage in battle, this was a covert operation. They had to be swift. The team split up, making their way to their designated targets, to disable security systems, access the ship's command center, and locate the ruins' location deep within the flagship's heart. Inside the command center, Hale worked quickly to override the Zalari security systems. Every click of the keys felt like it was taking too long. The entire fleet was still recovering from their initial shock, and they didn't have much time. "We're in," Hale whispered as the security grid flickered and failed. He nodded to his team. "Move out. The chase begins." The deeper they moved into the flagship, the more dangerous it became. Zalari patrols, still disoriented by the damage to their fleet, were beginning to regroup. Hale's team, knowing they couldn't afford to be seen, moved quickly through darkened corridors, avoiding detection at all costs. Suddenly, a loud clanging noise echoed through the hall. A patrol was nearby. "Hide!" Hale hissed, pulling his team into a nearby maintenance shaft. The sound of footsteps grew louder, then faded. The team held their breath, waiting for the danger to pass. As they continued their journey, the stakes were clear. This wasn't just about stopping an alien invasion, it was about humanity's survival. If they failed, Earth would be wiped out, and everything they had fought for would be lost. The heart of the ship. After what felt like hours of navigating narrow, winding passageways, Hale's team reached the core of the Zalari flagship. The central chamber, where the ruin was located, was a vast, open space filled with strange, alien technology. It pulsed with an ominous energy. The final weapon was positioned in the center of the chamber, a colossal orb, glowing with an eerie red light. It hummed with power, and Hale could feel the sheer force of its energy radiating through the room. This was the thing that could end it all. He motioned for his team to spread out. "We need to plant the charges. Make it fast." One of his team members, a quiet but skilled engineer, began working on the orb's control panel, attempting to disable the power systems. "We've got to disable the core," she said, her voice steady but tense. "If we don't, the ruin will keep charging. We won't have enough time to escape." Hale nodded. "Get to it, now." The betrayal. Just as the team began planting explosives on the device, the doors to the chamber slammed open. Zalari soldiers flooded in, their weapons raised. The element of surprise was gone. The team had been compromised. Hale's heart raced. They had to finish their mission. But now, they were trapped. "Go! Finish the job!" Hale shouted. "I'll hold them off." The team hesitated, but Hale gave them no choice. They had to disable the ruin. If they didn't, humanity had no chance. He grabbed a grenade from his pack and threw it toward the incoming soldiers, creating a blast of smoke and debris. As they rushed in, Hale fired back, his heart pounding. The team made it to the final control panel, pressing the last button to disable the orb's systems. The countdown to detonation began. The explosion had given humanity a momentary victory, but the war was far from over. The Zalari were regrouping. And Earth, battered and broken, was about to face its greatest test yet. The dust settled. Hale's heart raced, his breath shallow. The blast from the ruins' destruction had sent shockwaves throughout the Zalari flagship, leaving the once mighty vessel teetering on the brink of collapse. The towering walls groaned, and fire alarms blared as the core ruptured. But Earth's victory had not yet been secured. The Zalari were not a species that would retreat easily. Despite the chaos, their remaining forces began to organize again, prepared to fight until the last. Humanity had held on to one fragile moment of hope, but it would take everything they had to see this through. A desperate push. On Earth, Dr. Hayes and her team watched in silence as the first wave of Zalari warships began to break off from the flagship's wreckage. The humans had dealt a devastating blow, but they had also exposed their vulnerability. The remnants of the Zalari fleet were now gathering, preparing for one final offensive. They'll come for Earth. Full force, Dr. Hayes said, her voice low. We need to act fast. If we don't, the damage we've done won't matter. Inside the command center of Eagle's Resolve, the remaining fleet commanders exchanged grim glances. Every pilot, every ship, every soldier on the ground had seen the price of defiance. They had lost so much, but they had not lost everything. A voice echoed across the comms, cold and certain, we have no choice. We fight. Or we die. It was Captain Hale's voice. His team had completed their mission, the ruin was gone, but they were still trapped within the crumbling flagship. The countdown was ticking. They had no way to escape. The Zolari's final move was about to begin, and Earth's forces were still scattered. The final assault. Carter's death had united humanity in ways the Zolari never anticipated. The destruction of the ruin gave them a fighting chance, but now the true test began, the final assault. The Zolari launched a coordinated strike, sending waves of battle-hardened troops and ships toward Earth's weakened defenses. Massive warships cloaked their way through the solar system, each one a behemoth of destruction. Inside the Eagle's Resolve, the crew worked around the clock, knowing the next few hours would determine Earth's fate. We'll take every last one of them down, Hale muttered to himself, his face set with determination. He could feel the weight of their sacrifice, and of what still had to be done. The remnants of the Zolari fleet wouldn't stop until Earth was erased from the stars. The battle for Earth. The enemy was closing in. Waves of Zolari ships descended on Earth's orbital defense grid, slicing through the remnants of Earth's fleet like a scythe through wheat. The battle was fierce. Fire and explosions lit up the sky, with every human ship fighting for survival. Earth's forces were outnumbered, their ships battered and their crews worn thin. Yet, for every ship that fell, humanity fought back with the strength of those who had refused to give in. Captain Hale led the charge, his ship the symbol of Earth's final stand. Hold the line, he shouted over the comms. They are not taking this planet. Not today. A massive blast rocked the fleet as the Zolari ships tore into Earth's defenses. Earth's remaining warships launched one final, coordinated strike against the Zolari flagship, the heart of their remaining forces. But the Zolari weren't done yet. The battle was only just beginning. The last push. Dr. Hayes's hands trembled as she reviewed the final calculations on her terminal. The Zolari flagship was still intact. The remaining Zolari warships had grouped together in a tight formation, preparing to launch a final assault that would overwhelm Earth's defenses. She needed one last desperate move. If this works, she said to herself, we win. But if it failed, Earth would be lost forever. The final plan was a 1-in-a-million shot: send a small team of fighters to breach the flagship's defenses and deploy a nuclear EMP directly into the heart of the flagship. It would destroy the Zolari command structure once and for all, neutralizing their forces. Prepare the fighters, Dr. Hayes ordered. It's now or never. Humanity's last stand. The small fleet of human ships moved into position, their remaining forces scattered but resolute. They were the last hope. Hale's voice came through the comms again, now tinged with urgency. This is it, people. If we don't pull this off, Earth falls today. The small fleet sped toward the Zolari flagship, the final weapon they had left in their arsenal. The skies above Earth burned with explosions as both sides unleashed everything they had in a final, desperate push. Engage. Hale commanded. The EMP was launched with devastating speed. It tore through space, streaking toward the Zolari flagship at unimaginable speed. Everything depended on this moment. Cliffhanger ending. The EMP reached its destination, and in the final moments of the battle, it collided with the Zolari flagship's central core. A massive, blinding explosion erupted across the battlefield, and for a moment, nothing was visible but white light. As the light dimmed, Earth's fleet came to a halt, waiting, breathless. Had they done it? Or had they failed? The silence was deafening. Then, a single message came through on Earth's comms. The Zalari flagship has been neutralized. Victory is ours. The battle was over. The last of the Zalari fleet had been destroyed, but the cost had been unimaginable. As the dust settled, humanity was left standing, together, stronger than they had ever been before. The war was over. The Zalari had been driven from Earth's orbit, their fleets shattered, their final weapon obliterated. But the victory came at a price that Earth would never forget. As the last of the alien ships retreated into the void, the quiet that settled over the battlefield was almost more terrifying than the battle itself. The wreckage of the warships floated in the distance, the remnants of an alien empire that had once believed it was invincible. And at the center of it all, Earth stood, broken but not defeated. The cost of victory. Inside the Eagle's resolve, the command center was eerily quiet. The crew had won, but their victory felt hollow. Captain Hale stood at the front of the room, staring out the viewport at the wreckage of the Zalari fleet. There was no joy in his heart. No celebration. "We did it," Hale muttered. But the words felt empty. Dr. Hayes stood beside him, her eyes heavy with the weight of the sacrifices. She looked down at her hands, stained with the lives lost in the fight. "We did," she replied softly. "But we paid a terrible price." The human fleet had lost nearly half of its ships. Thousands of soldiers, pilots, and civilians had perished in the battle. And Carter, the man who had led them through it all, was gone. "But we're still here," Hale added, his voice firm. "We survived. Humanity survived. A new beginning." With the Zalari fleet destroyed, humanity now faced the difficult task of rebuilding. The fight was over, but the war had left scars, physical, emotional, and psychological. It would take time for Earth to heal. But the people of Earth had proven something to themselves, and to the universe. They had survived. They had defied the odds and shown the galaxy that humanity was not a species to be underestimated. Dr. Hayes looked out at the damaged Earth below. "We have a long road ahead of us. But if there's one thing we've learned..." Her voice trailed off, and Hale finished her thought. "We can survive anything." The legacy of the fallen. The war had taken its toll. In the aftermath, Earth's leaders began to honor the fallen. Statues were erected in memory of those who had given everything for the fight, and Carter's name was enshrined as a symbol of humanity's resilience. As the survivors gathered to mourn their losses and celebrate their hard-won victory, one thing was clear: Earth was stronger than ever. They had been knocked down, but they had stood up again. They had become a force that no one would ever again dare to challenge. A message to the stars. With the Zalari Empire defeated, Earth's leaders made an important decision: they would not just rebuild, they would reach out. Earth had proven that it could defend itself, that it was not a helpless species lost in the vastness of space. They sent a message to the stars, a message to every civilization that might be watching. It wasn't just a message of defiance or strength. It was a message of hope. We have faced the impossible. We have fought for our survival. And now, we stand ready to face whatever comes next. For the first time in their history, humanity stood as an equal among the stars. They were no longer just a fledgling species, they were a new power, one that would never be underestimated again. The final lesson. As the war survivors looked to the future, they understood one thing: strength is not just in our weapons, or in our technology, but in our will to fight. Humanity had learned this lesson the hard way. In the face of overwhelming odds, they had stood firm. They had found strength in each other, in their unity, and in their determination to survive. They had proved that resilience was their greatest weapon. The galaxy had watched as humanity fought for its life, and in the end, it was humanity's spirit that had conquered. As the survivors gathered around Carter's memorial, Hale spoke quietly to Dr. Hayes, his voice filled with both sorrow and pride. "We did it, Evelyn. We survived." Dr. Hayes looked at him, her eyes filled with emotion. "We didn't just survive. We thrived." And in that moment, both of them knew that humanity's journey was just beginning. The battle had been won, but the real story was only starting. The universe would know the name of Earth, the place that fought back.